Simon. Thank you very much, Mark. That's great. I'm just inviting up to the stage David Barratt. David is a member of All Saints Church. And I'm just going to ask David a few questions about how he came to faith in Christ himself. Now, David, you grew up in a Christian home, didn't you? Is that what makes you a Christian, growing up in a Christian home?
Yes, it's true. I grew up in a Christian home, and I can never remember, there was never a time in my life when I didn't actually believe in God. Most of my life, I saw God as someone quite remote, though, and not really of that much importance to my life. But in my formative years, when I was brought up by Christian parents, I was taken to church, made to go 3 times on Sundays, and I think maybe that partly explains why I began to resent God in some way.
So, obviously, when you grow up and you're an adult and you leave home, you begin to make your own choices. What were the sort of choices you made with regards to church and Christianity and that sort of thing?
Well, before I became an adult, I did actually make a commitment to God. And in my home city of Nottingham, there was a guy actually from Eastbourne, an evangelist called Eric Hutchings, who had a Christian mission tour around the country. He came to my city, and when I was 12 years old, I did actually make a commitment to God. But by the time I'd got through my teenage years into early adulthood, I'd really moved far away from God and drifted right away.
That's actually an organisation I work for today, Eric Hutchings' old organisation. So, paint me a picture then, aged 40. So, David Barratt, aged 40. What did you believe about life? What did you believe about God?
Well, the David, aged 40, thought at that stage of his life he'd really done pretty well. He thought that he was on a path that, by the world's standards, delivered a reasonable amount of success. Before I was 40, I spent 20 years in the business that I came to spend most of my life in the sugar business. And at 39, I was made the managing director of this company. And all of my effort and energy was going into my career for the previous 20 years. During that time, we had our family, my son and daughter, Paul and Jane, now 37 and 32. And I think if you'd have asked them at that time what they really wanted most from me, the answer would have been very simple. It would have been more of me, more of my time. But along those years, they didn't get that because I was putting all of my effort into my career. And my career had simply become my life.
So you're a very driven career man, and if I'd sort of parachuted in and asked you, what do you make of Jesus in these years? What would you have said, do you think?
Well, because I was brought up in a Christian home, and I'd grown indifferent to Jesus, I think it would have actually stopped me a bit in my tracks, because, as I said earlier, I really didn't believe in God, but I didn't want to give up control of my life. I wanted to live life my way. I wanted to make the decisions.
Okay. So obviously something changed. So can you talk me through how it was that eventually you were sort of drawn back to Christ?
Despite having a reasonable amount of success and financial rewards and power and recognition in my business life, and that's what most of my life seemed to be about the business, there was a longing for something else. There was a void. I wasn't satisfied or contented. And about 22 years ago, I was introduced to a guy through my business, of course, who was a Christian in Devon. If you'd have asked this guy, Frank Bristow, what he did, I'm pretty sure he would have said, well, I'm a lollipop maker in Devon. But actually, it was a bit more sophisticated. He owned quite substantial sweet factory, sweet business, making candies and fudge and chocolates, all those kind of things. And well, somebody had to go and sell him sugar. So that's how I was introduced to him. And over the years, we became good friends, and he started to ask me to go and spend weekends with him and his wife Jane at their place in Crediton. And I did this many times, and when Sundays came along, Frank would always come up to me and say, "David, we'll be popping off to church for a couple of hours this morning. You're very welcome to join us, but there's no pressure. You can stay here, and we'll just come back and have a nice lunch." But I always went with him. And whenever I sat through the sermons, I felt challenged by the message that I was hearing. I really felt that was a time that God was speaking to me about my life. But I chose to ignore what I heard and didn't make any response. And I left the church just as I'd gone in, still separated from God. But in August of 2009, Frank invited me to stay at his holiday flat in Instow, near Barnstaple. And so I went down there, and when Sunday came around, it was the same routine. He came along and said, "We'll be popping off to church this morning for a couple of hours. Where we go in Barnstaple. You're very welcome to join us, but don't feel any pressure." But again, I went. And on that occasion, God didn't wait to speak to me through the sermon. He actually chose to speak to me through a Sunday school teacher who was talking to the children before they went out to their own Sunday school class. Her message was very simple, but it was really very pertinent to me that day. And to help explain this to the children, she had a couple of empty glass boxes on a table. And her message was about how your life should be built on the right foundation, how everything should be in the right order. And in the first glass box, she had a layer of rocks on the bottom. And between these rocks, she placed a lot of stones, so everything was bound together. And then she filled the whole box with sand, so that everything in that box was secure and firm, and nothing moved. In the second box, she had exactly the same components, but this time she put them in a different order. First, she put the sand on the floor, and then the small stones next. And then she tried to put in the large rocks. But guess what? Not all of the rocks would fit in. Everything in that box was in the wrong order, and it was all loose and upside down. And I sat there knowing that God was speaking to me that morning, and he was saying, "David, this is how your life is. It's a complete mess. You've really messed up big time. Everything is in the wrong order. But don't worry, because I want to change all that. I want to give you a new start, wipe the slate clean, and restore you to the person that I made you to be. All you have to do is to just trust me, and I'll do the rest." But you know what? Stubborn old me, I just ignored what I heard from God that morning. And I left the church just as I'd gone in, separated from God. But you know what? God hadn't finished with me that day. In the afternoon, I went for a bike ride with my friend Frank. And I couldn't get any peace at all in my life that day. And Frank must have realised what was happening to me. We had some pretty profound conversations. And these continued on into the evening when we went out for dinner with Jane. We came back to his flat late at night, and I just knew that I had to put my life right with God before I went to bed. I couldn't hold back any longer. And so we just prayed together, and I just prayed a simple prayer to God to tell him I was sorry for the life that I'd lived, and to ask for his forgiveness, and to give me that new start in life that he'd promised me. And at that moment, it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It was as if somebody had switched on the light, and I'd seen the purpose of why I was here.
That's wonderful. Wonderful to hear. So since then, you've sort of built your life around Christ. He's been the rock at the centre of things. What's it been like following Christ? I know you're very involved with the night shelter, for instance, in the town. You've got that going together with some others in Eastbourne. You've got a real burden for the homeless and helping out there. How does your faith kind of impact your life and those kinds of interests that you have?
Since I became a Christian 2.5 years ago, it's not been a bed of roses all the way, I can assure you. There have been a lot of challenges. A lot of the things that I've done in my life I'm not proud of. And I've had to go back and confront many things. But God has given me the courage to do that, and where I can, to have set the record straight. Now, there are still some things in this life that I just can't put right, but I do know that God also knows that too. But what I've found is that I'm work in progress as a Christian, as we all are, but I've discovered that God has changed the desires in my life that I once had. And the things that used to attract me don't hold that attraction any longer. And even in my business, which I'm still involved in, I've found that this has been an opportunity that I can serve God through. And making money isn't why I get up in the morning anymore. I still like to make money, but I like to do it in a way to honour God. And one of the calls that I've found on me has been to try to serve God in our local community. And He's just opened so many doors and showed me the way, how He's been prepared to use me in ways that He's enabled me and given me skills to do just that.
Fantastic. Yeah, we're very grateful for that too, and thankful to God for you and all that you do. Final question. We're asking this question tonight. What do you really like? And questions like, do you exist? What would you like to say to that question as we finish?
Well, I would like to say that God exists not just because of what we read in the Bible and what we know about in history, but because God can actually live in us through Jesus Christ in our own lives today. And that's why I know that Jesus is real. And for me, it's a matter of knowing what we know in our heads, connecting what we do know in our heads with what we feel in our hearts, with Jesus alive in us. That's how I know that God exists.
That personal dimension.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, David, for sharing your story. I'll just leave you up here just for a minute. We're going to have a comfort break right now. And so for the next 10 minutes, you can see to your needs. The bar will be open, I believe. Is that true? No, it's not true. Forget that I said that. But what you can be doing instead is there are these question cards on your seats. Do you have a question that's been raised by something that you've heard tonight? Something to do with the issues that we're particularly addressing tonight? That will have the priority in terms of the question and answer panel afterwards. But please do fill that out here or on the screen. You can text us on 07593 072 750. And at the end of the evening, we will have a go at answering some of those questions. But thank you very much, David. And let's give David a round of applause. And we'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you very much.